And it looks like we are live. If you can hear me, well, I guess we'll give you a chance to log in first. But if you are here, if you can hear me, go ahead and type something into the chat. I am experimenting with YouTube Live for the first time on this channel, so I will be counting on you for your feedback to figure this out, to figure out how to make the best of it. We'll wait a couple minutes to give everyone a chance to log in. Let's see. I know there is a bit of a lag with the video, so do account for that. But if you have questions at any point, go ahead and type it in. I'll talk for a little bit while people log in, then I'll go to the chat and see what questions we have, and we'll continue the conversation there. So first of all, a quick heads up. This Sunday, I'm going to be teaching a live workshop. This is the MCAT strategy workshop, where I'm going to walk you through how to set up a plan to prepare for your exam. So that means we're going to talk about what you have to do when, and figure out if you are here and you need to be here, what are all the steps that have to take place along the way. Now, this is going to be a free workshop. You can sign up, I think the link's in the description, or just visit leahforsci.com/MCAT strategy, and that's where you're going to sign up for the workshop. But if you have questions on MCAT logistics, go ahead and type them in the chat. I guess let me know before I continue if you can hear me okay, if you can see me okay. This is the first time I'm doing a live video on this channel, so I just want to make sure. Let's see. I'm not seeing any comments, so let's see. If you can hear me okay, go ahead and type it in. Otherwise, I will assume that you're just watching silently. And let's, I guess, take a moment to just talk about the different subjects that are on the MCAT. With the exam happening right now, so we already had one March exam. This weekend we have the April 22nd exam, and then every month there's going to be a handful of exams until September 9th, which is the last one for 2017. So let's talk about a couple of logistics, depending on where you are in the process, if you're interested in testing this year, if you already have a test date, or if you're trying to figure out what's going on. The big, let's take a step back overview first of all, is what is on the MCAT. So there are 4 sections that, if we just break it down simply, because the AMC gave them ridiculous names. The first section is what I call the Chem Phys section. That's mostly the chemistry and physics. The second section is critical analysis and reasoning skills, or simply CARS. Think of that as verbal reasoning. The third section is the biochem, so that's where you have more biology based. And the final section is psychology and sociology. Now, depending on where you are in school, you may have taken all the classes already, or you may have either studied something related to that, and now you're trying to figure out which classes do I take next, or do I even have to have a class. Let's take a step back and discuss that real quick. So the 8 disciplines, I want to say subjects, but verbal isn't really a subject. The 8 disciplines you have to prepare for are physics, general chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry, biology, psychology, sociology, and CARS. Physics is one of those classes that you really don't want to take after the MCAT. You don't want to go into your exam not having taken physics. It's a difficult class, it takes time to process, and having the experience of going through it during the semester will help you quickly get through the review. Now, physics, again, is not as big as, say, biology on the MCAT, but if you can get it out of the way, this subject tends to be the most difficult for a lot of students. Ideally, you want to have both physics 1 and 2 before you take your MCAT. Then we have general chemistry. Let's face it, Gen Chem is a prereq for organic, for biochem, so you don't want to go into your exam not having taken that. Definitely have taken general chemistry. The next one we have is organic chemistry. This is the one where you can get away with not necessarily having taken it. In fact, a lot of schools are going away from the organic chemistry 1 and then organic chemistry 2 model, and instead they're doing orgo and biochem. So if you're trying to figure out, can I take the MCAT before or after orgo, I will recommend at least having taken Organic Chemistry 1. Orgo 1, it's the foundation. You're going to see a lot of questions that are taught in Orgo 1, but they're disguised as a biology question or a biochemistry question. Organic Chemistry 2, you can get away with not taking before your MCAT because, first of all, Orgo 2 is a lot about advanced mechanisms, right? Malonic ester synthesis, Robinson annulation, acetoacetic, all these crazy things that you're not going to see on the MCAT in terms of the step-by-step mechanism. So if you just kind of learn on your own and figure out, okay, so these are the main ideas. Yes, you need your redox. Yes, you need your alcohol reactions, your ketones, your aldehydes, your carboxylic acids. But you don't have to do the course if you haven't taken it in time. You could just learn that on your own. So then we have biochemistry. This is a little bit of an iffy one. A lot of students take the MCAT before having taken biochemistry, and a lot of students take biochemistry and still don't cover everything because biochemistry can be broken down into 2 semesters. Some schools will teach one segment, for example, the pathways or the protein and structure side. So every school will be different. And let's just sidetrack here. We have a quick comment. Techno Kid, greetings from England. We're specifically talking about the MCAT today, so unless you're preparing for the MCAT, I'm not sure how this will help you. But hey, you're welcome to stick around, right? The MCAT is specifically the exam for students looking to apply to US, Canadian medical schools, and then some schools around the world in other countries. So we were on biochemistry. This is a subject that you can get away with not having taken before your MCAT. So you can basically learn the material on your own. It's not going to be easy, but if you think about what's covered in biochemistry, it's really just a combination of general chemistry, organic chemistry, and biology. So if you're really good at that, you should be able to pick up biochemistry on your own without having taken the class. So we had physics, gen chem, orgo, biochem, biology. This is a tricky one. Every school breaks it up differently, so how do you know which biology classes to take? It's really a question of how much time you have and what you're willing to learn on your own. So for example, a basic biology class should cover things like the cell and evolution, and really all that's coming to mind right now is the cell or cellular molecular biology is what I'm thinking of. And then you have the other side where you have systems and organs, so the A and P side. If you're not sure what to take, taking a year of biology, for example, General Bio 1 and 2, that should be good enough to give you that starting point. You can take anatomy and physiology. It'll be slightly overkill for the MCAT, but at least give you a good understanding of the systems. And for the most part, you should be able to learn everything else on your own. There are a lot of classes that will still help you for the MCAT, but tend to go into much, much more detail. For example, genetics. What you learn in your genetics class is going to be very, very in-depth. And maybe a third of that will be relevant for the MCAT. So yes, it's going to be very helpful. You don't necessarily have to take it. Cellular molecular biology is another one that I would highly recommend if you're trying to figure out which bio to take. And of course, if you have questions on a specific bio, you could type it into the comments and I'll be happy to suggest if that's recommended or not. The other big thing to keep in mind is how much time you have. If you have 3 years, you can take every single biology class, but is it really worth it? So then we have psychology and sociology. This is another gray area where it's recommended to take an intro to psych or soc just because of the exposure, the discussions, the readings, but you can pick up most of it on your own. Up to this point, this section was mostly kind of like memorization and cars put together. So you just had to know who said what theory, just memorize a lot of things, for lack of a better way to explain it, and then a lot of reading comprehension from the passages. From the March MCAT, the feedback was that it was a lot more research-based rather than just memorization, which was what the exams were like in the past. So we'll find out in in April, right? I'm jumping ahead to the end of the semester, end of the summer. We'll find out how the exam turns out this weekend and then the other exam in April. So I'll have much better feedback for you. I do interview students after every MCAT so that I understand where or if any changes were made or if the exam went in a different direction. You can learn psychology and sociology on your own. So if you're not sure, then if you have the time to take a class, great. Otherwise, get more than one resource. That's the one issue with a lot of the MCAT prep material. No one resource covers it all. So if you have, say, Khan Academy videos and then 1 or 2 prep books, go through the AMC flashcards, that combination should help you prepare. All right, if you guys have any questions, because I'm not seeing any questions, go ahead and type it in. If there are no questions, I'll just give you a little bit more basics on the MCAT and then we'll call it a day. So again, it's up to you if you have questions that you want to discuss or not. The next thing I want to talk about is the timeline, because this is another big thing that comes up a lot. You always say you want to test early. Rolling admissions, the earlier you test, the earlier you apply, the greater your chances. And that is a very good discussion to have if it's not April 19. Because if you're having this discussion towards the end of the summer and you're preparing for the next year, then yes, you can start studying in September or October and be prepared for the January or the spring exam the following cycle. But if you're having this discussion right now, unless you've been preparing, you won't be ready to test early. So the question is, do you test anyway when you're not ready, or do you give yourself a little bit more time and have maybe a less competitive application because it went in later? It's kind of like the chicken and the egg question, because you're torn between testing early and improving your chances, or testing later, getting a higher score, but coming in very late in the timeline. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is, if you're not ready to test, don't test. If you are determined to get your scores in as early as possible and you test no matter what and you come out with a 480 something, chances are you're not getting accepted, because that is very, very, very not competitive compared to the MCAT scores most schools are looking for. So definitely keep that in mind. But then how much you postpone, that's where you have to really weigh the pros and cons. So a quick overview of how the rolling admissions process works. Applications open in May. That means starting in May, you can start inputting your application. Now, it's not this quick survey that you just log in and complete in one day. You want to treat this application almost like it's a research class, something that you spend a lot of time for. There are questions, there are submissions, there are essays and more essays and more essays. And every essay is sort of like a mini personal statement where you have a chance to prove yourself to the medical school. So you don't want to rush it. You definitely want to give yourself time. Now that opens starting in May, and you can start on that right away even if you haven't taken your MCAT. In June is when the actual applications start getting submitted to the schools, and this is what people consider the rolling admissions, or the early exam in the rolling admissions. So if you can have your application completed throughout the month of May, submitted the first week of June, assuming you have an MCAT score and that school goes by rolling admissions, you will be on top of the list. So what does that mean? If it takes 30 days to get your MCAT scores, then if you test in January, you have your scores by February. If you tested in March, you should have your scores soon in April. Testing in April, you'll have it by May. That's good. Once you get into May, you start pushing your application back a little bit. If you test in the middle of May, you get your scores in the middle of June, you miss that first week. And I keep putting it in quotes because it's very, very important to test early. Do not think otherwise. But don't think it's test early or bust. That's where I'm going with it. So if your application is in late because you tested in the middle of May, you got your scores in the middle of June, it's not the end of the world just because you're not in first. So again, stepping back to that timeline issue, what happens is the earlier the application comes in, first there's a verification process, and that can go anywhere from a couple of weeks to many, many more weeks. The AMC has to go through and make sure everything looks good before they submit it to the school. This includes letters of recommendation, which unfortunately holds a lot of students back. Don't wait for that at the last minute. I've had many students do their MCAT early, do the application early, but they don't have their letters of recommendation, and that means the entire cycle is held up because they're not ready. But anyway, once your application is verified and the schools get it, you will be higher up on the list for the applications that they can review. That means that if they see your application and they review it and they like it, they're more likely to offer you an interview first, where somebody who tests much, much later and their application is much, much later, chances are by the time they are weighed against all the candidates, there may be fewer spots left. Now, it doesn't work exactly like that. There are certain circumstances that will make one application jump in front of the other, but for the most part, that is the process, and therefore the later you test, the less and less your chances of getting in. So what is considered early versus late? If you have your application in June, that's considered awesome, right? That is the first month that it opened. You're maximizing your chances, assuming everything is really good. If you have your application in, so say you get your MCAT score in July, that's still not terrible because it's that second month. I mean, let's face it, if anything past July was considered a terrible MCAT date, why would they offer the MCAT in April? Well, this year was March 31st, but it's typically April through September if all those dates were terrible. So there is definitely the option to test later and still get accepted, but your chances just go down a little bit. If you have to test in July, it's not the end of the world. Your application goes in August, that's considered sort of late, but it's still not terrible. If you test in August, that's when you're really starting to push it. And if you test in September, if your school has rolling admissions, you're testing practically in the last month, that is considered very, very late. Now, that being said, I have students who tested in August last year, and they currently have acceptances for the coming fall. So it's not a guaranteed no. It's simply a much lower chance given all the students, the hundreds and thousands of students that have already applied before then. The schools that don't have rolling admissions are completely different. They have a hard deadline, and if you get your application in before that deadline, you're basically good to go. So this is typically the Canadian schools tend not to have the rolling admissions, and then there are a couple of random schools in the US that have their own application process and their own application cycle. If your school does not have rolling admissions, what you want to do is figure out what is the deadline that they will accept your score, and then, or not just the score, but the entire application, and try to test well before that, but still building in a buffer. So for example, say that deadline is all the applications have to be in by October 1st. You don't want to take the September 1st exam counting on I think it's October 1st, right? Because it's about 30 days, counting on an October 1st MCAT score, because something could happen. I had a student last year who did that. She waited till the very last minute for a Canadian application, and then the testing center lost power. Their exam got canceled. She took it, I think they created a special testing date 2 weeks later, but it was already too late for that application. Now, I think they may have made an exception. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but you don't want to put yourself in a situation where if something happens and you're forced to postpone, you just basically ruin your chances because you didn't give yourself any buffer. So with that example of an October 1st deadline, if you can test in August, get your scores in September, there is still a little bit of a buffer for you to get things in order to figure out what's going on, and worst case scenario, if you have to retake your exam, you'll still have that opportunity. All right, I am still not seeing any questions, so hopefully I've not been talking to myself. Hopefully you guys are actually able to hear me, because the only comment I saw was greetings from England and no reply there. So assuming I have not been talking to myself for the past however long we've been doing this streaming experiment, I would love to hear your feedback. If you're watching the recording afterwards, is this something that you would be interested in participating in the future? If I did a YouTube live Q&A where we chose a topic and then we had questions on it, is this something that would interest you? So let me know either in the chat here, or if you're watching the recording, let me know in the comments, and maybe we can come up with the schedules. Again, this is brand new to me. This is the second time I'm doing a YouTube live. I did it on my other channel on the weekend. So I'm still trying to figure it out. I realize the webcam isn't the clearest, and all those issues that will have to be worked out. But again, we're experimenting. You tell me what you're looking for, and I will try to figure things out accordingly. And finally, I do want to remind you that I will be teaching a live workshop this coming Sunday. The workshop is strategic MCAT prep. A lot of students say that, yeah, I'm going to prepare for the MCAT. I have this many months, and they have no idea what to do. So they think, okay, what do I do today? And every day they open their books and try to figure out, okay, do I study this? Do I study that? When do I test? What do I do? Without a plan. And the problem is, if you're doing this without a plan, you don't necessarily know where you're going. You don't know if you're doing it correct. And it's not just about the overall plan, it's about if I am here and I need to go here, how do I know if everything along the way is being done correctly? So I'm going to show you how to set up that timeline on Sunday's workshop, and we're going to cover a lot of different topics, from how to come up with your plan, what to plan, what is realistic, what is not realistic, how to set, what are the milestones, how you set the milestones, lots more. It's actually all the information is on the sign up page, and the link, let me pop that into the chat real quick. The link is leahforsci.com/MCAT strategy. So if you click that link, it'll take you to a page where you can sign up. It's free. It's going to be live only, so you will have to be there to participate and to learn from it. And okay, we have we have questions. I wonder what happened. Just to do a quick test, for those of you who are here live, if you can do this test for me, I want to understand how bad the delay is. Is it like a 20-minute delay? So when I'm talking now, you're not going to hear in 20 minutes. I want to see what's going on. So as soon as I give you a number, I want you to type that number in the chat, and I'm going to note the time on my computer. So at this time, I want you to type the number 5. Go ahead and type it in. We'll see how long that takes to come in. And after you type that, go ahead and type any questions that you have. I guess we'll go for as long as there are questions, or as long as people are interested in listening. So, okay, so the 5s are coming in. The delay is only about 1 minute. That's not bad. That is way better than I expected. So I guess everybody was just watching silently up to this point. Okay, so go ahead and type any questions that you have. And then, and let me know the video and audio quality. Obviously, this is not what I normally use to record. So let me know what you think of this quality compared to the videos, just so that I can work on improving things moving forward. All right, so let's go through the questions in order. Melba says, you're helpful listening as I grocery shop. That is awesome. Talk about multitasking. The best way to utilize any time that your brain is free but your body is not is audio. Podcasts, videos in your ears, or a live streaming if you can do that as well. If you have Wi-Fi or internet in the grocery, that is awesome. And you could do this while you're grocery shopping, while you're working out, while you're cooking, while you're cleaning, while you're feeding the baby, while you're traveling on the bus, driving. Just don't look at any videos while you drive, because I used to volunteer at EMS, and then I worked in EMS. We saw a lot of stupid accidents. And I say stupid because they were caused by people being stupid. Don't do that. That's my PSA for the day. All right, question. Do you consider a GPA of a 3.4 bad? That is a very good question, and a lot of the answers are going to be it depends. So let me clarify what I mean. There are certain schools that are looking for the top students only. If they have an average accepted MCAT score of, say, a 3.8, a 3.4 would be considered bad for a school like that. Doesn't mean you can't get in, not necessarily, but that's not your best chance. What you want to do, and I actually cover the planning in the free guide that I have on my website in chapter 2. I'm going to pop that link into the chat. It's leahforsci.com/step2 on how to set your targets. This is choosing a medical school, figuring out scores, and all of that. leahforsci.com/step2. But basically what you want to do is, first of all, make a list of the schools that you really want to go to and research their average accepted GPA. If their average GPA is significantly higher than yours, that could be your dream school, your reach school that maybe you won't get into, but you will try very hard, because if you get in there, you will be on top of the world. Then you want to have some schools that are at your level. So if you're at a 3.4, that's actually a pretty decent GPA for a lot of schools. Find a school that has an average of around a 3.4, maybe a 3.5, 3.6. And keep in mind that if this is the average, there are students higher and there are students lower. So if their average is a 3.6 or a 3.4, somebody with 3.8 is going to balance you out. Now, obviously, the further away you are from the average, the less ideal of a candidate you are, but I don't see why you shouldn't get into medical school with a 3.4. Question: besides the personal statement, transcripts, and MCAT scores, what other things do we need to have? If you're talking about the application, that is not my specialty. So I will refer you to Dr. Ryan Gray of medicalschoolhq.net. He has, I think, 4 podcasts right now, and his specialty is working with students to prepare them with their application, with their interviews, and all of that. So if you haven't already, I'm going to type the URL into the chat. Sorry guys, bear with me. Last time I did this, I had a glare on my glasses, so I put on contacts just for this, and I'm not seeing very well with them. So bear with me there. The link is medicalschoolhq.net, and he has a lot of information about the application process. If you want to multitask, like the student who commented about the grocery before, go to the podcast, and then on his website, just search podcast and application and see what comes up. Download a couple of podcasts, listen while you work out, while you do chores, and I'm pretty sure it's going to answer your questions and many, many questions that you didn't know you had. Question: I've been getting a 497 on the next step full length. What should I do? Okay, so that is a very I need more information. So a 497 on how many exams? A lot of students treat the exam as this is a practice exam. I have to take it for the sake of taking it, for the sake of seeing how I do, but they forget the next step. Review the exam, learn from the exam. You need to ask yourself the question, why did I miss points on this exam? If you can figure out where you lost points, don't stop there. Work on those weaknesses and then take another exam. If your scores don't go up, then you haven't worked on your weaknesses. So if you're in a plateau, there is something that you're not doing right. And I'm not trying to put you down. I'm just saying there's something you need to work on to figure out what it's going to take to get you to that next step. All right, that is all the questions I see. So unless somebody has another question, go ahead and type it in. If you don't have questions, hopefully you will join me for a much more formal live workshop, right? This was an impromptu, hey, let's try YouTube Live kind of thing. On Sunday, it's a free workshop. It's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern, and it will walk you through step by step how to prepare for your upcoming MCAT. It's not so much how to prepare like teaching sciences. We're not going to do any passages. It's more about figuring out what it is. So if you have so much to cover, right? You have all the 8 subjects that you have to do: physics, general chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry, biology, psychology, sociology, and cars. When do you do all of that and then somehow balance learning the content with practicing the content and doing practice passages and discrete questions and full lengths and review, and all of that in the time between now and your full length? So I'm going to show you how to figure that out, how to figure out if the date you set and the score you set is realistic, then figure out where to break everything up, how to set everything up. I'm going to show you how to set up a backwards calendar, so you can say the day I'm taking AMC2, AMC1, sample test, different exams, full lengths for practice, review, all of that, and somehow manage to balance that if you have a full-time job, if you're going to school, if you have kids, if you have whatever else you have going on, making a custom schedule rather than just saying, this is a schedule I found online, I have to stick to it. But if that person is studying for 10 hours a day and I work, so I'm just not going to sleep, and if I don't sleep, I get an extra 8 hours, yeah, I can do all that studying, right? You know what? It may sound crazy, but I cannot tell you how many students come to me and say, yeah, so I'm just going to sleep 5 hours, and that gives me enough time to do ABC. It doesn't work. So I'm going to show you how not to do that. And of course, Q&A every step of the way to make sure that you understand everything that we're discussing. And it looks like we have another question. I've tried a ton of different cars techniques, but nothing has been working the same way I've been improving for the other sections. I don't know what you're doing wrong. The thing with cars is it's harder to diagnose than other sections. In another section, if you show me that you can't explain glycolysis, I could tell you to study glycolysis. If I see you don't know your chemistry or physics equations, I could tell you to study that. With cars, it's more about the strategy, the approach, the way you analyze the passage. So without knowing what you're doing wrong, I can't help you. What I recommend is if you want to schedule a tutoring session, I can dissect a CARS passage with you, and in doing so, figure out where you can improve and then kind of take it from there. With CARS, I typically recommend doing a 3-set of tutoring, so I can show you the strategy in the first session, you can work on it, come back on the second session, improve that a little bit, and the third one we kind of hone it, set you up on your own so that you can continue studying. A name that I can't pronounce, do you do tutoring? Yes, I do. So email me if you're interested. Right now, with finals coming up, I have the my organic chemistry student finals are taking up more of my time than usual, so I'm not accepting many clients right now. But over the summer, depending on how you're doing or how many hours you're looking for, we can definitely schedule a session. So a quick question. YouTube is telling me I have serious viewing issues because of bad video settings. If you guys are seeing bad video settings with like low resolution, things like that, just let me know, and I'll play around with it after. And finally, comment here, I've tried in a specific method. So I don't like that method. I think that passage mapping, writing things down, is a waste of time. If you had overnight, so let's say this was a homework assignment, go do this, CARS, come back to me tomorrow. Yes, you want to read the whole passage, you want to passage map, write the main ideas, all of that. But if you are trying to complete a passage, reading in just a couple minutes, quickly get through the questions, there's no time. So what I recommend is, instead of passage mapping, do it in your head. Read a few lines. What did I get out of this? Okay, can I quickly summarize it simply in my head? Can I highlight a word or two that will remind me of this? And that's it. Don't write anything down, and that'll get you through it faster, so that when you get to the questions, you have time to go back, you know where to go back. But we're not going to go into a whole CARS strategy here because there's a lot to talk about there. My MCAT is in 8 days. Okay, so you don't want to be trying any new strategy within the last week or so before your exam, because you don't have enough time to implement it. Anything that you're trying now, you need to practice every single day. You never want to get to your exam and try something new without having practiced and proven it before. So my question to you, if you're testing in 8 days, is very simple. What is your target score, and how did you score in the last 3 exams? This is the question I ask everyone when they tell me they're not ready or they're not sure if they're ready. If you have a target score and your last 3 full lengths did not match up, you need to either void or postpone your exam, because the chance of outscoring your practice scores are very, very low and very uncommon. Question. What's the lowest MCAT score that would be considered for MD? That is a loaded question that I can't answer, because every school is different. So for every school, you want to look up the average to understand what they're looking for. And then within that average, consider that the lower you go, the lesser your chances. I have students who have gotten in with a 505. I don't recommend testing if you're only scoring a 505 in practice. It's not high enough. So yes, again, there are students that get accepted with a 505, but if your school has an average accepted score of a 510, you better keep practicing and bring that score up a few points. All right, guys, with that, let's go ahead and call it. Oh, I was going to say I don't see any questions, but one just popped up. I'm taking the MCAT in January and plan to start studying next month, 5 days a week for 7 hours. Do you think that's too long? I recommend going with a baseline of 500 hours. Now, the fact that you're testing all the way out in January, it's a little bit more iffy in terms of the earlier you study, the more likely you are to forget. So you don't want to go with a hardcore strategy that ends in, say, October, because what do you do from October to January? So make sure you show up to the workshop on Sunday, because I'm going to show you how to figure out what to study when. And if you're testing in January and you're about to study, it's really more about planning when you're going to get through phase 1, when you're going to get through phase 2 and phase 3 to go from there. So hopefully that answers your question. And again, Sunday's workshop, layitforsci.com/ MCAT strategy. All right, guys, with that, let's go, unless another question pops up at the last minute. Wow, we were here for half an hour. Okay, awesome. And definitely, if this is something that you're interested in, maybe more focused Q&A, so we'll go with a specific topic in mind, we will maybe experiment with this a couple more times, and we'll see where it goes. You know, this is way easier than a YouTube video, because with a video I have to record it, then it gets edited, transcribed, and I have to be in the mood, and this I just turn on the webcam and hey, here we are. Alright guys, with that, have a great evening. Hoping to see all of you on Sunday for the workshop.